One of the best things about learning about wine is the discovery of new grape varieties, and no matter how minor they may be. And one of those minor but very, very interesting and worthy grape varieties is Pinot Blanc, which, as its name might suggest to you, is indeed a relation of Pinot Noir. It is originating from France. It's grown pretty well through Alsace in France, and also it's pretty popular through Germany. Pinot Blanc, though, for me, would, if I was in charge, be the grape that we're drinking instead of Pinot Gris. I think it has a lot more flavour, a lot more perfume, a lot more character, and I think it travels beautifully around the world. And in actual fact, it does migrate pretty well. It's grown in Canada, it's grown in Oregon, New Zealand, Australia, to name several. And just to show its versatility, it's also one of the grape varieties that's used in Canada to make ice wine, and in Italy, it's one of the grape varieties used in Vinsanto. So talk about variety and versatility in a white wine variety, you've got to be thinking Pinot Blanc. Right, it's now time to taste some Pinot Blanc, and I've got two examples here, one from Tasmania, right down south in Tasmania, and also a wine labelled Pinot Blanc from Alsace. Now, it's important for me to say at the outset that in Alsace, you can describe a wine as Pinot Blanc without it being 100% Pinot Blanc. That's part of the appellation rules in that part of the world. In this case, this wine is 50% Pinot Blanc and 50% of yet another relative of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay called Auxerrois. So it's half and half Auxerrois and Pinot Blanc. And that's a very, very typical thing when you do buy wines described on that label from Alsace as Pinot Blanc. So let's then compare a 100% Pinot Blanc from Tasmania with this blend of Auxerrois and Pinot Blanc from Alsace. So pouring the Alsace here on my left and the Tasmanian on my right. First thing to notice, the Pinot Blanc, the white in its name refers to the fact that the grapes themselves are white. They produce a lighter colour as they ripen than Pinot Gris and certainly Pinot Noir, which is a red grape. So looking at these two wines, their colours, both are very, very pale. These are young wines. The vintage of the Alsatian wine, which is from Hugel, is 2011, and the Tasmanian wine is a 2012. So there's just 6 months between these two wines when they were harvested and made. But both the typical Pinot Blanc colour as a young wine, which is very, very pale, quite a little bit of green and just a little bit of straw emerging, but very, very pale and fresh. That's fantastic. So what I'm going to do is I'll start with the Tasmanian wine, since it is 100% of the grape variety Pinot Blanc. So having discussed its colour, it's bright, fresh and clear. The perfume. Now, this is what I love about Pinot Blanc, and I really do suggest you try it. And if you're one of those people who love Pinot Gris, give this variety a go. It's very, very heady. It's very fresh. I'm smelling really bright, vibrant aromas of stone fruit, apple, perhaps a little bit of peach blossom. It's very floral, very fruity, very fresh, very pure. And typically, as you find here, those kinds of flavours extend through to the palate. This wine is made by a French-trained winemaker, Alain Rousseau, and what he's done is introduce quite a bit of yeast solids prior to bottling. So it's picked up what we call a little bit of earthiness, a bit of meatiness, a bit of funkiness, all of which gives it texture and richness in mid-palate. So here we have a wine that has brightness, lovely length, and almost a crunchiness down the palate in terms of texture. Great acids and this vibrant presence of this peachy, apple, slightly citrusy fruit, which is so typical of Pinot Blanc. But because of the way it's been treated in the cellar, it has more of a savoury and refreshing aspect to the finish, making it go perfectly with food. Okay, and now from the Alsatian corner of our tasting, from Hugel, which is one of the great producers, legendary producers from Alsace. This is the Blanc de Blanc wine, Pinot Blanc, 2011. Once again, the colour is terrific. And this wine doesn't quite have the depth, the funkiness and the complexity, that nutty, slightly more creamy complexity that the Tasmanian wine has. It's not been made to quite that extent with solids involved after fermentation. Still fresh flowers, a little bit of pear, a little bit of apple. Very, very attractive. What I do love about this though, typically Alsatian palate structure where you've got relatively soft acid, so it's very unctuous, very easy to drink, very smooth, very generous. And it just travels down the palate beautifully with those fresh apple, pear flavours, wrapped in a bright but quite a gentle sort of lemony acidity. Beautiful punctuation and typical regional expression of this wine. So drinking beautifully now, both of these wines in their youth. Would I keep them? Perhaps to me they're about 5 to 8 year prospects, which is once again typical for me for good wines labelled as Pinot Blanc. So they're not for the ultra long term in the cellar like perhaps an Alsatian Riesling or a Gewürztraminer, but delicious drinking now for the shorter term. So next time you're faced in a situation, you're looking at a restaurant list and you're under a bit of pressure maybe to choose a Pinot Gris or a Pinot Grigio, why not do something just a little bit radical, which I'm sure you're going to enjoy, and have an experiment with Pinot Blanc instead.